I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 색다른 느낌으로 만드는 맛, 나만의 세상 만들어 장악. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. 해가 지고 뜰 때까지 I'm up, yeah.
The U.S. election has been the highlight of news for the last year, no matter what country you're a part of, with arguably the most, if this is the right word, thrilling journey, with both candidates, Biden and Trump, giving the public way too much to talk about. And now, Kamala, we throw in the mix with a potential first African-American female president. Sounds exciting. People have so much to talk about, but tonight we're going to be giving you something that's not often discussed between Canadians. Who is the best leader for Canada? Joining me, Brittany, Wyatt, and Anthony. Guys, ladies, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I want to start off, Anthony. I'm just curious, does it really matter who the leader of the United States is for Canada? Do we really care?
Yes.
But do you think average Canadians care?
Yes, I do.
Really?
Yes.
After I show you the streeters?
So that's fine. The people I talk to are very concerned. And it dominates the news. It dominated the news. I remember in 2015 when President Trump first ran, it just dominated our news. And people were very focused on it. I've seen a lot of changes, especially socially in our country, and the demeanor of some Canadians because of him.
Do you find there's a larger divide because of the U.S. election in Canada?
I mean, I honestly really don't think a lot of people care about it from a policy standpoint in Canada. I think a lot of people in Canada seem to care about it because they like, Donald Trump because he's funny, or they like Kamala Harris because she would be the first woman president. In terms of the actual familiarity with some of the policy issues, not strong whatsoever. I don't think people care in any way in Canada on those.
So, Brittany, I have a stat for you, and I'm excited to present this to you. In 2020, 32% of Canadians held a favorable view of the United States. Of course, President Donald Trump was in office. And now with a new president, 64% express a positive opinion of the country. What does that say, one, about Canadians, and two, about the United States?
Well, first of all, let me say it's so interesting to hear your guys' perspective and like what you're getting on the news over there about what's going on over here. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Canadians are pretty well known for being nice people, and I think that is a good stereotype to have. It doesn't totally surprise me. Listen, Donald Trump, the former president, he's got a bombastic personality, and it's one that rubs a lot of people the wrong way. But listen, a lot of people here in the States do like him. It's going to be a tight race. It was tight in 2020. Obviously, he won in 2016. And I think that is just maybe we're all in line that it's not time for another Trump presidency, and maybe it's time for to move the Republican Party, in my personal opinion, in a different direction. And maybe, VP Harris will pull it out this November.
Yeah, I think it says a lot about Canadians, how they view the U.S. election and just the journey that's on. I think we find it very entertaining, but at the same time, I do want to say it says that as Canadians, we are a little bit more, sorry, but a little bit more passive. We don't love, when a leader stands up and makes some of the remarks and is less diplomatic. I think we're used to a diplomatic prime minister in most cases, right, Anthony?
Well, yeah, of course. Why would anybody want that in a leader? No, and he's not exactly.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, as Americans are a little bit more divided on that. Trump speaks very freely versus who was President Obama was not the most free speaker, but very smart with the things that he said. So it's just interesting. The balance there, why America supports.
I find, so to his point, Wyatt's point, I find the people who like that kind of behavior are not in tune with any of the policies or how the country works.
I don't know if that's fair to say about half of the country.
Well, I think it's fair to say because most of the people, there's a statistic where almost half the people in the United States can't name the three branches of government. So
and you think that's the Trump side?
No, I'm not. I never said it was the Trump side. I'm just saying if that's a statistic in that country and you see this guy come out and just say whatever he wants, there's already been cynicism about government. This all goes back to Nixon resigning and getting caught with Watergate.
Okay, we've got two more segments to talk about Trump and Biden and Kamala as well. But I'm just curious, Brittany, just real quick, you got about 20 seconds here. What do we need the United States to be from a global perspective? And what do you think Canadians expect from the United States?
Yeah, well, in the United States, we like to think of ourselves as a global superpower. And I don't know how everyone else sees us, but I think that we have pretty much lived up to that, hopefully. And I think for Canadians, we want someone who we can be, hand in hand with, collaborate with, and work together. We share a border. And so we need to be friends and allies here, I think.
Why do you think, real quick, it's possible for the United States and Canada to work together on a lot of things, but also be individualistic with their own jobs, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dependent on who the president is, for starters. I mean, I think over, like right now, for example, both governments are liberal. It's much easier to do that.
Right.
I think naturally a lot of the collaboration kind of comes
Okay.
because the policies are so similar.
Okay, we'll be right back.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah.
We're just asking Canadians if they care about what happens in the U.S. election.
I'm gonna have to say no because the president doesn't rule over Canada.
I think it does just because how close our relationships are.
Not really.
No?
Well, in the sense that we don't want idiots running the country down there.
Everything that the U.S. does, Canada has to follow, so it definitely affects it.
That's fair. How have you seen Canada and the U.S. relationship over the last 4 years with Biden in office? Do you think it's been hurting or do you think it's been thriving?
Hurting badly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say necessarily because of Biden, but I mean, just the country's gone soft. You can't really do much. Everyone's too emotional.
Do you think there's one leader better than another for Canada?
Just not Trump.
Trump keeps saying that none of this stuff would be happening in the world if he was leader. And I believe about like 80% of it, to be honest.
He's had his time and he botched it, so Trump.
Trump?
I think he would do a better job, and I think all of the prices were less when he was in office before.
Fair. There are two perspectives. Of course, you heard both of them on a relationship with the United States. Policy and politics, I think, are the two things to talk about here. Now, while the perceived character of individual leaders is important, it is also their impact on foreign trade policy, I feel, that truly affects Canadians. So, what does our current relationship with the United States look like today, starting with at least trade? So, Anthony, I just want to touch on this with you. Were trade relations stronger under Trump or Biden?
I'd say they're stronger now because an unnecessary trade war wasn't started under Biden. But I do think that when it was started under the previous president, there were some things in there that should have been updated and renegotiated. So, yes, that did happen. We lost a bit of governing time. The federal government in our country did because of that. And it was just so abrupt and unnecessary. But
well, you say the word unnecessary, and
yeah.
Wyatt, I want to throw to you here just a little bit. When we use the word unnecessary, did Trump look at it more of an America first approach?
I think you have to look at it from the standpoint of it was purely politics. I mean, he was looking to make a statement in a lot of regards, and so he was thinking about it, well, how can I advance the America First message? And he thought that the way to do that was in the form of tariffs, and then, of course, Canada said not so fast. They imposed their own retaliatory
But Canada did
tariff.
have tariffs first on the United States.
Right, but it was just essentially proving the fact that after, because once Canada decided to impose the retaliatory tariffs, the United States were putting in place a tariff of, I think, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum, and then they decided after Canada imposed the retaliatory tariffs, okay, we're just going to pull away our tariffs.
Now, just to play devil's advocate here, Trump did renegotiate the NAFTA agreement that actually made it more fair for Canada as well as it relates to Mexico manufacturing and labor, because when we have low wages in Mexico and we're producing everything there, it's not necessarily as good for Canada or the United States, especially when we're importing a lot from China through Mexico and then driving it up to the United States and Canada. Brittany, from that perspective, do you think Trump or Biden was more beneficial from Canada in bringing them more opportunity locally in North America?
Well, you know what? Like, I'm not a policy expert here, but this is what I will say. You're right when it comes to NAFTA. I was working in Congress when that was happening. That was happening under Trump's term. Then we had the pandemic, and that kind of ruined things for a lot of people across the world. Obviously, I think that we're still probably recovering. Hopefully, mostly recovered. It's been a few years. But no, I mean, I'm not, I am a Republican and I was part of those processes, but regardless, I won't support Trump. So unfortunately, that's my answer, is that I think one way or another that Trump is not going to be beneficial to the United States or to Canada.
Okay, fair point. Now, I just want to bring this up in relation to our climate goals. One thing I can confidently say, and I think we could all agree, is that because we have a liberal and a Democratic government, they get along quite nicely as it relates to climate goals. Typically, we see that as a party issue. I'm just curious, is that part of the reason why you guys think Canadians align so nicely, 64% of them align so nicely with the Biden or Harris campaign?
I think it's just based off of the fact that on every issue, I mean, it's hard to find an issue with the exception of maybe energy and the Keystone XL pipeline as an example where the United States and Canada don't agree. I mean, if you're looking at climate, sure, Donald Trump tried to pull out of the Paris Accords when President Biden became the president. He rejoined the Paris Accords and Canada very much welcomed. That was certainly one of the things when President Biden was elected. Prime Minister Trudeau in some of his first interviews was talking about how his greatest kind of hope now that President Biden is elected is that there's going to be a renewed sense of leadership on climate. So, I mean, yeah, I guess it's fair to say that. I mean, I don't know if it's the only issue.
Anthony, your point, I mean, we obviously know a lot of the stance people have in Canada on just climate initiatives. They feel like they can blame that for hurting them. Do you think we would align more nicely with a government in the United States that supports a more natural gas, oil, and just making energy prices a little cheaper in that front?
I think that the U.S. has been kind of lackluster on environmental initiatives, because if they were going to be smart about it, they would have what we have: a carbon tax, cap and trade, something like that. So as much as, yes, we're sort of aligned on the climate goals, what are they doing to achieve those climate goals? And I don't think they've stepped up as much as they should. They're a huge emitter in the world, and they should be doing more.
And is that why you think Canadians align more with a Biden-Harris campaign?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
I'd say we're kind of, yeah.
So we'll jump into it a little bit further on Trump specifics and then Biden after that. We'll be right back.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, yeah.
Saying this man's name in public will make you either loved or hated. Thanks to party politics, the divisiveness between presidential candidates has never been more extreme, and thanks to other things as well. But in most cases, the divisiveness clouds any sort of reasonable discussion between the two, and that is why we are sitting down today to have that. Our approach in this segment is to discuss the pros and cons of another 4 years in the Donald Trump presidential era, specifically how it relates to Canada. So, Wyatt, I want to ask you this here. From our generation's perspective, did we notice a huge difference between one leader or another leader, Trump or Biden? Really?
Not for our generation. I mean, if you're looking at it from an emotional standpoint, then sure, like there's certainly opinions that people have based off of what they see maybe on social media and the news media.
Grade 8 classrooms were a blast to be a part of when Trump was in office.
Right. And even when Biden was in office, I mean, he became kind of like a laughing joke amongst
a lot
high
of
school
memes were
classmates.
played. Yes.
But I mean, I do think like if you're looking at not necessarily just our generation, other demographics, there's a lot to be said. Like we talked in the previous segment about Keystone XL and energy, and you know, the United States canceled it because it wasn't going to be a strong job booster for them. But of course, for Canada, it was. And so that was a time that, as just one example, you know, the Trudeau Liberals and the Biden administration had a different stance on.
So, Brittany, I want to throw this one over to you here. In your opinion, under President Trump, how was international trade affected? Like, what was the relationship there? Do you feel like it was strengthened? Do you feel like it was weaker? Of course, that impacts Canada, but I'm just curious from your perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I mean, I think at the end of the day, when we're just talking about trade and the way that he was perceived by the world, I know that he likes to say that he's the strongest leader, everyone respects him. But when we're talking about the American perspective and what we're seeing in this election, what he's going to be hit on is Putin and his relationship there. It's going to be, you know, with North Korea. It's going to be with these dictators, and I don't know that it was necessarily stronger. He thinks it's stronger because he thinks he's respected, but I don't know if he is in the way that he actually thinks he is.
Okay, fair. Anthony, on your point.
You know what? I want to go back to one thing you said about how he renegotiated NAFTA. No, he renegotiated it with Canada. And Minister Chrystia Freeland does not get the respect she deserves for being so fierce during that time. But look at
Trump called Freeland a threat like constantly.
Yeah, I remember all that. So I'm trying to forget it, but that's fine. So
we're talking policy. Let's get
here's the thing. He did talk about stuff when he was running the first time that I agreed with. He talked about trade deficits with China. He talked about trade deficits with Mexico. Those are important things for the U.S. economy.
You can agree that we do need somebody to fight for that.
Yeah, okay, bombastic versus actual policy is different. But
it took us 4 years. It took us how many years to place 100% tariffs on Chinese-made EVs?
How many years it took to do that?
Trump was somebody that fought for that.
Yeah, but Biden got it complete, and that's what matters. Is it was done under the Biden administration. What I hoped Trump was going to be for Canada was he has a powerful voice, a force for good in the world, someone who's going to protect democracy, promote peace around the world. That's what I had hoped he was going to be. I actually hoped he was going to change from being so bombastic. When he got elected, he would take the job seriously, work with our country, not call our leader two-faced, and not create a trade war. I was hoping it was going to be a bit better.
Again, policy-based.
Those Chinese tariffs are a bipartisan thing too. Canada just did the exact same thing a few days ago.
Right, I know, but that's something that just happened. This could have happened years ago, especially when we've been planning for manufacturing jobs in Canada for so many years. But on to the next. In regards to the energy sector, Brittany, I'm just curious, have you seen anything change in terms of Trump's presidency? Obviously, the Keystone Pipeline was a huge benefit for Canada as well.
I mean, look, I'm a Republican. I believe in all the above energy. I think that's important. We say here that not only do we need to be energy independent. We need to be energy dominant. And so when you're looking at Democrat policies and Republican policies, I agree with the Republican ones. And you see that Harris knows that that is an issue where she's not winning, which is why she has taken a softer stance on things like fracking. I think that we need to be, of course, taking care of our environment and being good stewards of the earth, but we also need to make sure that we're not combusting our economy, because if we have a strong economy, that is helpful to our partners like Canada.
Right.
When Harris first ran in 2022, to Brittany's point about fracking, she was strongly against fracking. She was in favor of a bunch of carbon initiatives, whereas now the environmental issue, the energy issue, as Brittany was mentioning, is nowhere near as center stage as it was when she first ran in 2020 for the Democratic nomination.
Now, one of the things I want to ask Anthony really quick is, did Trump's renegotiating of NAFTA actually help us be less dependent on countries like China?
I think it definitely strengthened. There was a lot of stuff in there about small businesses that I like. So yeah, I think it made us more reliant on each other. So I'm not saying everything was bad. Okay, I'm just saying that it's the whole factor of how it was played.
We do need to be less dependent.
Of course we do, and we should be more reliant on our trading partner like the United States. He did play a role in that, and he will get credit for that in history. But my whole thing is, it's all about the way that you do it. That's how I look at it. It's all
about
the
fact that it got done.
Yeah, but it's all about the way you approach it, and the way that it was approached in the beginning, I was not a fan of, and that's why I have the opinion I do.
We got to move on here. We'll be right back.
I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah. I'ma rule the world, I'ma rule the world, yeah.
Okay, so we can kind of agree that the memes of Biden can be funny, right, Anthony? Yes. Okay. Why?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, of course, memes of Biden were a marketing strategy, or maybe they're simply put, they were just him. But nonetheless, there's plenty to discuss with the current active president and what his office has derived for Canadians. Listen, the reason I bring up the whole meme thing is because, well, our generation only really looks at the memes. They don't really look at the policy. That's why we have to have these discussions.
Yeah, I also think like both campaigns, including Donald Trump, which is a shift. He originally wanted to ban TikTok. Now himself, he's actually on TikTok. And it's just showing that both of them see the value in reaching Gen Z where they are, which is TikTok and on some of these social media platforms. And they've actually been talking about policy. I mean, we talk about how we are
like
not
on TikTok and stuff.
Right. We often talk about how we're not a fan of the drama-based politics. I've been pleasantly surprised with Harris and Trump in terms of the amount of policy that they're doing, not just on TikTok, but on all social media.
So when we talk about when Biden took office, it shows 70% of Canadians believe that the U.S.-Canada relations would improve under Biden compared to Trump. Now, why? I don't know. Brittany, can you maybe give me an understanding here? Forgetting about the Trump just opening his mouth maybe a little bit too much.
Well, I was going to say sort of like, I think what we were talking about in the first segment, I think that perhaps Trump's personality isn't totally in line with the personality of a lot of Canadians. And especially after the 2020 election, and then there was the insurrection and his unwillingness to even now say that that he lost the election, I think people are over it. And when your neighbors just across the way are having to deal with real policy issues and where we're focusing on some of the drama, it makes sense to me why people would be enthusiastic and Canadians would be enthusiastic about maybe seeing some other folks take over and see how they handle things.
Do you guys feel like Biden took a more America first approach than Trump did, or did he take a more, hey, we want to be friends with everybody, even if that means we run some trade deficits with other countries?
I think the difference is all in the messaging. Like, I don't think Biden campaigned on America first as strongly as Donald Trump did. That doesn't necessarily mean that he didn't govern from an America first standpoint either. I mean, he certainly has given a lot of money to other countries as well. I mean, in actuality, though, Sam, like, I think if we're looking at what both presidents have done from a policy standpoint in terms of the global relationships, like Trump was just as supportive of sending money to Israel as President Biden is right now. In fact, President Biden is the one who is not as supportive in sending aid to Israel because of the pressure he has from his party. There's a lot of division.
I want to jump to one thing here, Anthony. Immigration was a big thing under Biden. That is something that America is really struggling with right now at the border. Has that spilled over into Canada?
Has it spilled over into Canada? I know that there was concerns with Roxham Road, and there was concerns with Roxham Road. I think, look, and inevitably, I just don't see people walking from Corpus Christi to Quebec. So no. But I do see airports like JFK and like a lot of airports that are close to the Canadian border. I can see those being used as ways inside our country because they have been, and it's been proven.
I mean, we saw, I have it written down here, it's interesting. I don't know how much this is equate to Biden or whatnot, but 140% increase in immigrants, refugees coming to Canada through the United States.
There's a lot of Republicans right now, actually, one of which is Vivek Ramaswamy, who's trying to equate some of the issues that we're seeing at the southern border to the issues at the northern border during his campaign for president. He went to the northern border and again was trying to portray the fact that, with Roxham Road, as Anthony was mentioning, even when President Biden had came to Canada, and I think it was March of 2023 now, that was at the forefront of the discussions between the president and the prime ministers.
Right. Just a quick question, Brittany, from a Canadian perspective here, 30% of Canadians currently approve of Trudeau's leadership, our prime minister's leadership. Do you feel, just from an American looking in, do you think that we would align more with a U.S. president, Republican or Democrat?
Oh, good question. I'd say probably a Democrat. But
Despite the
there's always common ground
30%
to be found.
statistic?
Do you disagree? That's what I think.
Yeah, Anthony, what do you think? Like, obviously support isn't as high for Trudeau at the current moment. Who do you think we would align with most as we end off?
We would probably align most with the Democratic presidency. Yeah, probably a little bit more left-leaning than an actual Democrat.
Even though the approval rating for
there have been 30% approval ratings before for presidents. Yes, this is not uncommon. It's not the lowest approval rating in prime ministerial history. That was Brian Mulroney.
Canada's also just a much more liberal country in general.
Okay, all right, we have to end it there. Thanks, guys. Now, whether you're Canadian or American, this entire discussion applies to you. That's why we did it. As citizens of Canada, through trade, immigration, and defense, we should care deeply about who the United States elects as a leader. For Americans, it's crucial that Canada has a leader willing to work alongside the United States in establishing North America as a self-sustaining energy, manufacturing, and firmly defended partners for the betterment of North America as a whole. But we want to hear from you, especially if you disagreed or feel we missed something important. Join the conversation on all socials with us. We'll end off with this. Do not simply accept what you are told. Challenge your thinking, engage in differences, and please listen to new perspectives.